Okay, good morning again, everybody. Thank you for being here. And we've been working our way through a book called God's Voice Within. This is Mark Thibodeau, and we've gone through characteristics of desolation and consolation. And now we're in the second part of the book, the middle part of the book, which is what to do once you've identified yourself as in desolation or consolation. What is St. Ignatius advising you to do? And then the third part will be how to use these rules when you're in the process of discernment, which is a fancy word for making decisions. And so I'm going to run through these 8 responses to desolation today. Um, and then the next session we have, which I'm not sure when will be, we'll go through when you're in consolation, what you do, and then we'll move on to how to use this stuff to make decisions. So these 8 responses are: 1, name it. I think in our terms, that would be to admit your powerlessness over whatever's going on. 2, don't make any big changes. This goes along with our step 10 saying continue, 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 continue. Don't make big changes to things that you've already decided to do when you were feeling okay. 3, lean into your support network. This is where I think AA shines. We build a support network for our fellowship, people that are in our fellowship, that I don't think anybody or anything else comes close. I think our fellowship, when it's operating in accordance with what the book tells us to do, I'll tell you, for me, it's the most wonderful thing I've experienced in this life. Uh, but I've had I've had my moments of not wanting to go to meetings, or going to meetings and copping a resentment pretty quick against somebody that for whatever, I have written on it. I have solved most of them. I still have my basic complaint comes down to, you're not doing your job. I know what your job is, and you're not doing it. And but what really is behind that for me is I've always been an ambitious person. I've wanted a lot out of my life. I've wanted a lot out of your life. I want a lot out of AA. And when you behave stupid and say stupid things, and that I think are contrary to our stuff, I get annoyed. But I'm getting better. So lean into your support network. Number 4 is interesting. Look at logistics of your spiritual life. And then he's going to break that down into moral aspects, logistical aspects, and what he calls psychological aspects. Number 5, beware of the false angel of light. This is just a wonderful image. I think it's where something shows up. It could be a new relationship, it could be a new toy, it could be a new pet, it could be a new anything, and we grab onto it and decide, okay, this is gonna solve my problem. It's absolutely contrary to the ABCs, which I think are a powerful part of our program. Any rate, that I understand what it means to say I'm alcoholic. I am understanding my powerlessness over stuff. B, no human power is going to solve my problem. That means no false angel of light is going to make me feel better. Um, and then C, God can and will if God is sought. That really means if I can acknowledge the presence of whatever you call it working in my life. One of the things we're going to hit is when you're in desolation, to try to build your faith that God is at work in your life, even though it sure doesn't feel like it. And I think later on, this gets defined as what they call difficult desolation, which doesn't feel good, but it does represent a healing, a restoration to sanity, moving away from the obsessive, selfish self centeredness of most human ego personalities. Um, Number 6, be firm with the false spirit. I put in parentheses your inner spoiled brat. Um, and number 7, be gentle with the good spirit. Number 8, build faith. Well, I just was saying that that God is at work in your desolation. That God is helping you to grow along spiritual lines. Please do remember that in how it works, it says we are not saints. The point is that we are willing to grow along spiritual lines. I think this is huge. I think when you couple that with practice these principles, um, carry a message, be aware of the message that you're carrying, and practice these principles in all our affairs. You combine those two, a willingness to grow along spiritual lines, um, and the idea that we're going to have to practice. We've spent some time talking in here about many of us, our unwillingness to practice. We just turn away or we try to avoid or whatever. The failure of practice means that I try to do something, and because I'm powerless over whatever it is, and because I'm trying to gain power, it means I'm going to fail. And the question is, can my human ego handle the negative aspects of my seeming failure? Of Course in Miracles says somewhere, I just love it. I've been reading it again, and it's just it's so amazing. Resign now as your own evaluator. You know, some of the things that you think were your greatest successes on a spiritual basis were actually some of your greatest failures. And what you think were some of your greatest failures on a spiritual basis are actually some of your greatest successes. And I love it. Resign now. Quit judging yourself and quit judging your experience. I have spent most of my human lifetime trying to make myself happy. And I've only learned in the last couple of years. Ignatius got this at 31 years old, um, laying there in the castle recovering from this cannonball wound. You know, he saw that when he fantasized about chivalrous deeds, he got happy, but it didn't last. And when he studied the lives of the saints and he started seeing what they were doing, um, the happiness was more genuine and longer lasting. And he went through a conversion experience. I've been trying to make myself happy. I'll be, I think I'm going to be 79 in July. And I'm going to tell you, I don't know how far to go back. I've been trying to make myself happy. I'm trying to be a happy camper. And as a result of doing this, reading this stuff and trying to understand this stuff, um, what I want is consolation. And what I feel consolation is, which he says are feelings of increase in feelings of faith and hope and love. Um, that I have faith that I'm on to something that's going to make a difference. I have hope, enthusiasm for my life instead of dread. I've spent most of my days waking up dreading the day. Rosalie likes to, we will not regret the future. Um, you know, just anticipating negative stuff that's going to happen today. And I'm capable of catastrophizing just in a moment, just like that. I can go from nothing to I'm going to die. I'm going to have lived a useless life, and I'm going to die alone and afraid that there is no God, that this is all BS, whatever. I don't want to lose my train of thought. I'm going off on this. So I feel for me, that consolation are the feelings of faith and hope and love that I get when I feel I am in sync with God's purpose for my soul's life here on earth. Next book we're going to do is The Purpose Driven Life, Rick Warren. And it's just got this wonderful subtitle, What on Earth? No, what on earth am I here for? Why am I here on earth living this human life? Um, and he gives us 5 primary purposes that we can live for that are all things that we're already doing inside AA. I just love it. And we're going to go through them and talk about how that stuff shows up. When I feel I am in sync with God's purpose, not Jack's purpose. I mean, I've been through this battle. I've been trying to live to Jack's purpose for my life all my life, listening to this inner spoiled brat telling me what it wants and telling me what it doesn't want, and trying to convince me this is what I got to do. And when I turn my attention, the 10-step question at the end of step 10, when it says the only thing you're supposed to be thinking about all day long is not what can I do to get happier. You're supposed to be asking the question, God, how can I best serve you? Why am I here? What am I here to do? What message do you want me to carry, and to whom? Um, and when I feel in sync with God's purpose for my life, which frankly, I'm not sure what it is. I just know when I am in sync with that purpose, I feel better. I'll feel when this thing ends, I'm always a little anxious for these meetings. I want to do a good job and get prepared, and um, I'll feel good. I'll feel good till 4 o'clock, probably. I don't know. Because I feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I've had a lot of different sort of not spiritual experiences, but spiritual resources. I've been involved with a lot of different spiritual resources, and I love when I can see how they relate to what our big book talks about. Because for me, the big book is our Constitution. It's our founding document, and I love it when this stuff confirms that. Okay, um, so I feel in my better moments I am no longer seeking personal happiness. I am no longer seeking consolation. I'm no longer trying to arrange my life so that I can feel good. I'm trying to discern, why am I here? What on earth is my soul here for? And that first right off, the first thing in these spiritual exercises, it's either 22 or 23 out of 370. And we read it. Um, you know, uh, it doesn't matter if you have a long life, a short life, a rich life, a poor life, a healthy life, a sick life, an honored life, or a dishonored life. That is not what matters. What matters is that you fulfill the purpose for which your soul is living this human life. Emmett Fox says, your entire human life, however many thousands of days it is one day in the life of your soul. One life in the life of your soul. I don't have a clue. I do have a clue when it's my ego talking. That's getting better. And when we hit this number 6, be firm with your inner spoiled brat. Um, and he gives this example. I can see that. If you give in to the inner, any of you that have had children, and if you've had a spoiled brat, or you think about it yourself, if you try to sweet talk the spoiled brat, you get nowhere, and it just gets worse. And when you stand firm or draw a line in the sand or whatever, it backs off. And it's exactly what Ignatius talks about when you're doing with that. All right, so I'm going to start into these things, and um, so the first one is name it, and you could say diagnose it. Really, I think the Big Book and Ignatius are both saying the same thing. You only have two choices. Ignatius, desolation or consolation. There's no third state. There's no, I mean, there's purgatory, but purgatory is desolation. It just, I feel flat. And I love that Ignatius was way more worried about somebody that didn't feel anything than he was about the people that had passionate ups and downs. He can work with that. But when you're flat, that's harder to deal with. And I believe that flatness, feeling stuck, just not feeling like you're progressing or going anywhere. Certainly flat in AA when you go to a meeting and you just walk away feeling flat. Um, what to do about that? I think that's a state of desolation, and it needs some attending to, and I hope to talk about that later. So the first thing is this understanding what state you're in, and he calls it name it, diagnose it. They have this thing called the examine, where you're looking at the details of your life, like the past half day and the coming half day or whatever. But you're looking at right here, right now, and how you're doing with it. And I'll remind you, we have our 10-step protocol. When he doesn't say when in desolation, when you experience selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, or fear, when, not if, when you experience these things, boom, one, pray at once for removal. Two, share with somebody. That's him relying on your support network. Three, make amends if called for. Four, turn your mind to service. God, right here, right now, how can I best serve thee? That's our 10-step protocol, and that's just fundamentally what they're saying through all these different things. They're fleshing it out and giving us more details. Um, so first thing is name it. He gives some examples and some stories and talks about the sacrament of reconciliation. And then we get to number two, which is avoid making any big changes. And this is also a sign of desolation. When I want to follow a false angel of light, it occurs to me, I'm going to move to Texas or whatever. I'm going to do a geographic in our lexicon. Or, as I said before, a new relationship, a new toy, something new and different. And they're saying when you feel this desire to make changes, don't do that. The only change that they recommend is you up your game in terms of prayer and meditation, and in our work, service, because service is such a big component of our work in AA. In when we were dealing with the um, characteristics of desolation and consolation, um, this idea of true perspective in um, consolation and confusion in desolation, I think this is a big deal. I know it is for me, um, because I have suffered from self doubt virtually all of my life. Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Is this the right thing? Blah blah blah. How to solve this problem or do that? And when I am in sync with God's purpose for my life, I feel that's what they're talking about in terms of true perspective as opposed to confusion. And go back to the fundamental definitions: faith, hope, and love. The faith is a form of certainty, conviction, something. For me, it's I'm on the right path, and I felt it from the moment I walked into AA, and I feel it today as much as ever. I mean, after years and years of struggle and spiritually seeking different things and drinking all the while, of course, um, and not even willing to look at my drinking as problematical. That was my false angel of light. Um, I am so, we get to Rick Warren and purposes for your life. There's something he calls your ministry and something he calls your mission. And ministry means my area of service, where I want to be of service. And mission is the message that I'm going to carry. Um, and I have just from the start been so captivated by AA. Just the whole frickin' thing, our history and our development. I think I have heard that we have stabilized somewhere on a worldwide basis, somewhere around 2 million, two-thirds of which are in the US of A. Um, and I'm not sure what that's all about. I know the human being um, dreadfully resists change, and especially change that it doesn't think is in its interests. Um, so I may be a characteristic of that, but I did a big book workshop last weekend in Marblehead, and I remember saying uh, that of the 330 million people in the US of A, close to 30 million suffer from what they call alcohol use disorder, which simply means they can't drink safely. They've got the allergy, whether they recognize it or not. If they take drink number one, they're getting drunk. They're going on till they run out, pass out, or black out. Um, 30 million people. AA is 1.2 million, 1.3 million. That's 5% of our market share. To put it in business terms, we're addressing 5% of our addressable market, if you want to call it business terms. And I don't know why that is. I think there is such tremendous resistance to the human personality to really develop a relationship with God and want to serve God or serve higher power as opposed to make itself happy. That's my feeling. I think I went off a little bit here. What the book says on page 25 that we read earlier, we only get these two choices. One, going on to the bitter end, um, trying to blot out of our consciousness how miserable we are. It's at the bottom of page 25. Or two, and I love that it says this, accept spiritual help. It's there just waiting for us. The Jesuits are strong about saying, you have no idea how much higher power wants to connect with you. Here you are seeking in the wilderness for higher power, and higher power is desperately trying to connect with you uh, and get to you. And that happens in stillness. I want to read you something from A Course in Miracles. Got to watch the time here. This is, I hope I didn't read this last time. Maybe I did. No, I didn't. This comes from A Course in Miracles workbook lesson number 106, which is titled, Let Me Be Still and Listen to the Truth. If you will lay aside the ego's voice, however loudly it may seem to call, if you will not accept the ego's petty gifts that give you nothing that you really want, if you will listen with an open mind that has not told you what salvation is, then you will hear God's mighty voice of truth, quiet in power, strong in silence, completely certain in its message. Listen and hear your Creator speak to you through your soul. God will silence the ego's meaningless thunder and show you the way of patience, tolerance, kindness, and love. I put that in there. Be still and listen to the truth and live the life your Creator brought you here to live. Prepare yourself for miracles today. Be ready for salvation. Be still and listen to the truth. That's the challenge, I think. My ego's voice is so loud and it's so certain. I know we've talked about Jim the car salesman. Suddenly the thought crossed my mind. I put whiskey into milk and drink it on a full stomach. Everything's going to be dandy. I vaguely sensed I wasn't being any too smart. That's conscious contact. That's higher power saying, "Oh, please, don't don't take that first drink. Why can't you see what happened the last time you took that first drink?" But that's the way we are. We're powerless over wanting to drink when we first get in here. Okay, desolation response number 2: avoid making big changes. Goes through some stories. Um, Desolation response number 3: rely on your support network. We talked about true perspective versus confusion. He lays out three groups of three components of our support network, and I think this is beautifully applicable to work in IA. He talks about mentors. These in the Jesuit, it's a spiritual director. It's somebody that you meet with regularly who is trying to direct you in improving your relationship with higher power. Um, they are, and he gives at one point, he gives these wonderful qualities of a good mentor. If you've got the book handy or just make a note, these are on page 74 of God's Voice Within. Wiser than I, a good listener, doesn't pretend to be an expert, doesn't want to make me dependent upon them, an affirming presence in my life, not afraid to confront me, and never attempt to make a decision for me, objective, out of the circle to be affected by my decision. That's important. Neutral, um, not be a close member of my family or an immediate superior at work or my best friend. Um, and he distinguishes between general practitioners and specialists because they can be part of its personal area. So that's one. This is what sponsors. I think all those things were really good things to try to do if you are trying to sponsor another or if you're looking for a sponsor. So mentors number 1, companions number 2. The first 7 Jesuits referred to themselves as companions. They're walking side by side. You remember, I'm always talking about miracle level number 3. It's a miracle that I'm not interested in drinking. It's a miracle that God has become the most important um, fact of my life. I think it says. I think it's page. I don't know what page, 55 maybe. But 3, I'm walking on the broad highway hand in hand with the spirit of the universe. That's partnership. That's companionship. That's um, a wonderful. This is not talking about that. My mind went there, but companion is somebody who's on the journey with you, not your sponsor. I feel like it's so important when we develop relationships inside AA that have some regularity, and it's not a sponsor sponsee. It's companions on the journey together, being able to share with each other and support each other. So first is mentors, second companions, and third is the fellowship itself. The church, they're going to call it, but our church is our fellowship. And we gather in meetings. I love it. I love that we're in church basements. I just think that's so cool. And I know at the church that our local, my home group meets at, you know, I think 200 bodies come in and out of that church over the course of a week to go to meetings there. And I think maybe 40 people show up at Sunday for church. I don't know, could be off, but that is our church. I believe AA is my church, my fellowship. All right, going on to uh, desolation response number 4, which he calls consider logistical problems. Then he breaks them down into moral problems, which are where he's talking about. Um, I may have entered into a sin, and sin, um, I think, is when I do something that is out of sync with God's purpose for my life. I'm following a false angel of light. I'm doing something that I know somewhere down deep is not a good idea. It's either going to hurt somebody else, or in the long run, it's going to be difficult for me. And I'm essentially powerless over it. I think, two of our fundamental concepts, contempt prior to investigation and powerlessness, are so important to bring into our daily living, to watch. When I'm in step 10, when I feel selfish, dishonest, resentful, or frightened, am I practicing contempt prior to investigation? Am I judging a situation and reacting to a situation totally based on my opinion of it and not on the truth, whatever the truth may happen to be? So it's seeing my contempt prior to investigation, but even more important, seeing my powerlessness over me, that I cannot not react. We're never talking about our drink of choice or our drug of choice. We're talking about our drink of no choice. I drank even when I didn't want to. I had to. Um, these are reactions of no choice. Selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear, they're all reactions happening inside of me that I don't have any power over. And our alternative is God. Each morning, page 83, God, each morning in meditation, show me the way, because the exact nature of my wrongs is I'm not coming up with it in here. Show me the way of patience, tolerance, kindness, love. Can't beat that. Particularly because impatience, intolerance, judgmentalism, selfishness, and fear are the primary colors of most all character defects. Um, okay, moral. So we're talking about that. And remember, there are sins of commission and there are sins of omission. I like that. Um, where have I made poor moral choice and I'm suffering as a result of it? Um, Logistical problems, by that I believe he means the details of my prayer life. Um, I work with a number of people, and I too often do not start off by saying, I should do this. That was a confusing way to start it. I should do this and I don't. I wish I would do it more. Tell me about your prayer life. Tell me about the first 30 minutes of your day. What do you do after you're done, whatever you're doing? Um, Tell me about the first 15, 20 minutes of your, what do you do? What is your morning drill? How is your prayer life going? How often do you pray? What do you think prayer is? Really get into the heart, because I believe, when he's talking about these logistical problems, we have our circle and our triangle, and the triangle represents going to meetings, Recovery represents reading spiritual literature, working one-on-one, and service represents our service commitments. And the whole thing is in this circle, and the circle is prayer and meditation. It encapsulates everything else. And if I'm going to lots of meetings and working with others, but my prayer life is 2 minutes in the morning and 2 minutes in the evening, although that's better than zero. And it's one of the 5 things that you're taught first off. Pray first thing in the morning, God, please keep me away from a drink or a drug or something stupid today. Reading a few pages of the book, going to a meeting, having one-on-one contact with another alcoholic, and a prayer at the end of the day. Thank you for whatever. I mean, it's as true today as it is in the beginning. What I hope is the prayer in the morning and the prayer in the evening and the prayer as I go through the day, the pause as I'm going through the day, will get longer and more meaningful and deeper in a way, leading to an increase in faith, hope, and love. That's what we're after. Okay, he talks about prayer styles and all these different things, and there's Lectio Divina and Eucharistic adoration and praise and worship, Liturgy of the Hours, centering prayer, contemplation. This guy Thibodeau, he does prayer, meditation, and contemplation the way you often hear it. Prayer is me talking to God. Meditation is me trying to be quiet, open, and listening for God's guidance for my life. And contemplation is simply being with God. It isn't so much the interchange as simply being with God. And I didn't really experience that until I'm dying of depression, and I'm desperately praying that God restore me to sanity. And I had to get very, very still and invite God in and see what happens. Just a note here, when things get stale, I just want to say number one in AA, when things get stale, try to help a newcomer. They're waiting there for you to try to be of help. You don't have to be a sponsor. You don't have to be a temporary sponsor. You just start trying to have a regular conversation with a newcomer. It'll light you up. You hear it all the time. Another possibility is make an amend. Make one up. Make an amend, whatever. But amends are a wonderful way to affirm what we're doing. Of course, in the Jesuit, the Catholic Church, it's all penance, but it's a remarkable. I mean, I'm seeing more and more that we go through 4 and 5, which is our admission of our powerlessness over our insanity, the insanity of resentment, the insanity of fear, the insanity of remorse, feeling bad about ourselves. They are insane. 6 and 7 is the prayer for restoration. And even better, we've talked a lot. 7 is, okay, I'm now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now restore me to sanity in whatever way is useful to you and to my fellows, regardless of my feeling state. What a powerful prayer. I have no idea where he got it. Haven't seen it anywhere else in spiritual literature. So 6 and 7 are the prayer for restoration of sanity, and 8 and 9 is how we get restored to sanity. The challenges of 8 and 9 and going through that, admitting our behaviors that we don't feel good about and moving on. That's how we get restored to sanity. And that's just to get to the starting line of real work in AA, which is 10, 11, and 12 all the time. All the time, morning to night. What we do on awakening as we go through the day, when we retire at night. Um, I'm running out of time. Let's see. Okay, psychological problems. I'm just not going to get into, which comes first, the attitude or the chemicals in my mind. I don't know. I think it starts, my book says the main problem of the alcoholic centers in his mind, not in his body. Thibodeau talks about, you may need an antidepressant. I don't have good feelings about, I, and I, never mind. I'm just going to move on. Um, Desolation, response number 6. Good, we're making it. Be firm with a false spirit and work diligently. So he talks about this. Of course, you got to remember it was a very chauvinist world, and he's talking about when a man and a woman are in argument, and he's saying that if you're firm with them, they'll back down. And if you're not firm, you experience it. It's really quite a description. Uh, and I went to this one. We've talked about this one. I don't know how many of you have it, but this is the spiritual exercises. It's David Fleming. I know I've sent you the title and the author. The left page is a traditional translation, and the right page is his, calls it a contemporary translation. So here you go. This is number 325, the 12th rule of the first week. The enemy acts like a woman in being weak against vigor and strong of will, because as it is the way of a woman when she is quarreling with some man to lose heart, take flight, when the man shows her much courage, and on the contrary, if the man losing heart begins to fly, the wrath, revenge, ferocity of the woman is very great, and so without bounds. It's complicated to read it. He takes man and woman out of it. Evil spirit behaves like a spoiled child. If a person is firm with children, children give up petulant ways of acting. But if the person shows indulgence or weakness in any way, children are merciless in trying to get what they want, stomping their feet in defiance, wheedling their way into favor. So our tactics must include firmness in dealing with the evil spirit in our lives. And we've already talked about it's not evil spirit, it's the friggin' human ego. All right, I got to finish this up. Let's see. Firm with a false spirit. Response number 7, be gentle, patient, encouraging with the spiritual self. I don't need to say it. Be gentle with the soul, firm with the ego, gentle with the soul. And then finally, number 8. And I think this is really our work in meetings of the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. Build your faith that God will make good use of this desolation. I believe that faith building is job one, in our meetings. Building your faith that the God thing is for real, that the relationship with God is for real, that you can do that if you will try to do the things that we do. And the essence of that for me is to humbly rely on God and try to live the life I think God wants me to live, not the life Jack wants me to live. And if I do those two things, I am promised that I will experience serenity right in the face of the human calamity. So I'm just going to stop right there, except for one thing I've been dying to read to you. This comes from Pass It On, the Bill Wilson's biography. And this is on page 299 of Pass It On. Sobriety alone was insufficient to provide a comfortable life. These are Bill Wilson's words. Why all this pain? What have I done to merit this suffering? The answer I get is that pain, quite as much as pleasure, is in God's providence. And then get this, in the long run, everything evolves for the better. Everything evolves for the better, not because of pleasure, but because of pain. Whoa, it's just like Ignatius saying, doesn't matter long life, short life, rich life, poor life, healthy life, sick life, honored life, that doesn't matter. You know, Wilson saying it gets better, not because of pleasure. Pleasure just breeds complacency, um, but because of pain, actually desolation in this speak. All right, thank you very much. Robin's going to stop the recording. We'll have some open discussion, and I really appreciate your presence, and I'll send you emails as to when we will meet again. Happy trails to you when we will meet again. So thank you very much for your attention.
Sure.